Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. And today I'm still trying to get my pipe lit. That's the first thing I'm doing today. Well, before I proceed there, let me give you a couple of little, what do you call it, promotions. In the first place, we've got a new episode or issue of the Pundit Files out. It is short, which is an homage to Venger Satanis. You remember back when Venger had said he was giving up RPG publishing forever? I said, well, I should do an homage to him in the form of a Pundit Files issue. And I decided to make one that features a world in the style, well, an area of play, a sandbox type area that is in the style of Venger Satanis. And of course, a week later, he changed his mind and decided he is going to keep publishing RPGs. However, this product, by the way, has his, not his endorsement, it has his permission, in other words. I asked him, you're all right with me doing a parody? Yeah, he said yes, okay. So it has double the number of apostrophes as you will find in Venger's products. So you should definitely check it out. And of course, it's not just a rip-off of Venger style, it is if I was writing something Venger style, okay? And it's quite good. It's a really exciting setting to play in, a post-apocalyptic, weird fantasy context. It's part of World of the Last Sun, but you could probably put into any strange part of an RPG world. So be sure to check it out. Still only $3.50, okay? And second programming note is that, well, the Old School Companion 1 has hit platinum level now. It is another platinum tier RPG bestseller for me. So thank you so much to everyone who bought it. And if you haven't checked it out yet, you should see what all the fuss is about. And my third and final programming note is that this Sunday is the RPG Pundit Encounter. And we are having a very, very special guest star, okay? And I suppose that by the time, yeah, okay, I'll tell you guys right now. Okay, this is it. This is where you find out who is going to be my guest star. It is a living legend of RPG design and an incredible guy who was very happy to have received an invitation from me to interview him, and I was overjoyed that he said yes. His name is Sandy Peterson. Okay, he is one of the gods of game design from the ancient times, okay? And he is going to be on the show. We're going to talk, both of us, about a whole bunch of things. And you can bet we're going to talk a lot about game design. But knowing him, we're also going to be talking a lot about myth. We're going to be talking a lot about genre. We're going to be talking a lot about all kinds of interesting things. And I wouldn't be surprised if we get into talking quite a bit about politics. Because one of the things about Sandy is out of the whole Chaosium crowd, he's the one guy that said no to the kind of the woke shift and things, right? So he's a man worth listening to. So be sure to check him out this Sunday, okay? That's at 9 p.m. Eastern. And you can find it on YouTube. I'll post links. It's going to be a heck of a live stream, all right? So be sure to check it out. All right, and now on to the main topic. So remember how last week, or not last week, a few days ago, I did a video where I was complaining about how people had found some rando page from a book that had not really had any impact for a year, and then they made a big deal out of it, and it was because, my theory was that it was because a whole bunch of these guys that are even more dependent than I am, let's say, because I'm not going to pretend that I don't take advantage of when Wizards of the Coast does something stupid to rant. Of course I do. Of course I do. But there are some people that for them that's the only game they have in town, right? Because they can't really talk much about RPGs or about other stuff, design theory or do reviews or anything else. So it's basically just drama all the time in their channels, right? And so they needed drama and they weren't getting any recently. And to them I say you should have waited a few days because now Wizards of the Coast has done something really stupid, and it is completely legitimate to talk about this, because this is not some obscure little thing. This is the Monster Manual. So they have been talking about, Wizards has been releasing information about the Monster Manual. The first thing that it proves is that everybody left working at Wizards are a gang of morons, right? They're just, I mean, it's nice I'm guessing, I don't know, I'm guessing they're getting some government subsidy, like Hasbro is getting some government subsidy, because they are certainly doing, if not, it's a wonderful charitable work of giving so many jobs to the retarded, but basically everybody in there is mentally deficient. So their people are trying to make, like a monsters book you'd think is the easiest thing to make, right? Because the basic rule book, you have to try to figure out how to make the rules work, right? And the DM's guide has to have stuff that's going to be like the secret sauce, so to say, and a whole bunch of very different complicated resolutions of things and conditions and magic and useful appendices, and so it takes a lot of work. The monster manual's easy, right? You just have to stat out the monsters, right? But that's not really true, because the monster manual means that is where you make the things that player characters most interact with come alive. And how they come alive is important. And if you don't understand monsters, then you're going to fail right off the bat, right? And if you don't understand myth, you do not understand monsters. And none of the woke people are capable of understanding myth because they believe that nothing is true. This is the funny thing about myth. Because myth is actually not just myth, as it's not the common part of that word. Myth is talking about the archetypal world. So it by definition depends on you existing in a paradigm, a personal paradigm and a cultural paradigm, where we can understand that there are things not of matter who are nevertheless real, and that there are truths that are absolute, right? It is the opposite of the relativist concept of the postmodernist world. So in postmodernist, nothing is real. So everything can be whatever you want. You can imagine whatever you like and create whatever you care about, but then nothing actually matters, right? Nothing matters in that universe. On the other hand, in the world where myths came from, the societies that created myth, and that have then taken on, in subsequent cases, the mantle of myth from previous civilizations and continued to develop them and make them, in each case, the retelling of the story to fit one's own culture, there, it's super important that things matter. And so the first thing that matters in myth is that there are things that are not visible but are just as real as things that are visible. Right? So you could call that faith, but it's not really about faith. It's about the power of symbols, right? The power of archetypes. Archetypes are real things. So if someone can theoretically be scared to death for fear of a werewolf, whether or not the werewolf is there, that werewolf just killed that guy, right? That is the power that you can potentially have with these non-material things, non-manifested things that are nevertheless real, right? They are a different place of reality from ours. They're fairyland, right? They're another place, another thing, but they are real. And for them to be real, then if they do not have, if you can't put them into a grounding in the world of biology, you have to put them into, or much less into a grounding of a world where they're just basically people, right? You have to put them in a world where they represent things, because that's what their archetypes represent concepts and symbols. So you have to decide that a certain type of creature, a certain fairy, a certain monster, a dragon, trolls, all of those things, the different things, demons and whatnot, and everything in between, they are representative of certain concepts, specific concepts, right? So you can have a kind of a fairy spirit, like the Licho in Baptism of Fire, that is a creature that basically curses you with bad luck, and that's and that is a reflection of this concept of a person who is who believes that outside forces can create misfortune, and it's in fact kind of a product of projection of one's own, denying one's own responsibility for one's actions and attributing it to the fate, right, to bad luck. A satyr is a creature of unparalleled masculine lust, right? It's a monster you know, and in ancient Greek depictions, it was depicted with it's a very enlarged phallus and things like that. It's where a man becomes half animal because of their lust for sex, for wine, for violence, right? And all of those things embodied, right? That's how you can understand. That's how you have to understand monsters. And if you can't create that type of understanding, then what you end up being left with is either cutesy poo nonsense, which is in the new monster manual, or oh my god, so random, which is in the new monster manual, or these creatures are all basically just people too, right? They're just normal, except, you know, one of them has, you know, a half dozen eye stalks and can float, and another one has tentacles in his front instead of a mouth and can eat your brain. But they're just people, right? You can't claim that they're pure evil or pure good, right? Even though that is part of the whole point of myth. Part of the whole point of myth is to define vice and virtues, for people to be able to understand good and evil. And I've had some people, when I've commented on this before, that in the comments to the video will say, oh, but it's just stupid to live in a world where everything's just black and white. But no, you don't understand. Myth is not black and white. And if you what myths are you reading that are black and white? If you read the Mahabharata, it is not black and white. Neither is the Ramayana. Neither is the Greek myths. Any of them. Take any Greek myth. Not one of them is black and white, right? Neither is, for that matter, the Arthurian sagas, right? There isn't a single part of real myth that's black and white. Instead, it's all about, because the protagonists in the myth are not the monsters. They're the man, right? The hero. And it's about understanding how to negotiate between these extremes of vice and virtue, of black and white. But that means that the monsters themselves, yes, must be of the black and white variety, because you know what? They're not human. The anti-colonialist thing from last week was stupid, primarily because it suggests that in all myth, creatures like orcs and goblins and gnolls were just meant to be racist stealth mode substitutes for whatever, for, you know, black people or Asians or Latinos or something like that, right? Which is idiotic. Nowhere in classical myth did that happen, by the way, right? In classical myth, you had a lot of times when you had, like, you know, oh, the heroic people from the Barada kingdoms fought against these barbarians, and those were barbarians, right? And we didn't like them, but they were human, right? And there are, of course, some monsters that act more human, but they still aren't human, and a distinction is still made between the human and a creature like, say, a Gandharva, right, which is semi-immortal, which is basically a kind of an elf, a winged elf, but still. And it's the same thing with the world of the elves and the fairy world in you know, Irish myth and you know, British myth. So even those creatures, they can seem more like us, and that's also part of the kind of I think it's meant to represent the way that one can be tricked or trick themselves by a projection of one's own humanity or one's own goodness or badness or flaws or what have you. That there are creatures, in other words, creatures of spirit, right, not of matter, that look to you to be like you, and you think you can understand it, right, and you can understand them. But you actually can't, because they're not really like you. Fundamentally, at the very bottom of it all, they're something very different, you know, and that's an important lesson too. So the people who are suggesting, oh no, this is just all about, no, it's not about doing stuff in the black and white, right? It's about the black and white being there, being real, and being a force of power. And in old D&D, everybody understood this. Like Gary Gygax got it. The planes, in his AD&D version of them, not one of my favorite planar structures, but nevertheless, was extremely explicit. It was all worked out around alignment, a spoke of alignment, right? And that's more or less right. You know, like if you compare that to the Slavic world tree or the Germanic world tree, or if you compare it to the tree of life of the Hebrews, or if you compare it to the equivalent tree of life in Chinese mysticism, in all of these, you see these kind of divisions into different sections that represent different levels of understanding and of opposed opposites, right? Of like, this is the realm of fire, this is the realm of ice, right? That sort of thing. And so he understood this. The people now don't. And so what they're doing is stuff like, for example, this is the big announcement. And I've waited until now to say it, mainly because a lot of you have probably already watched other videos that already spoiled this, which is that there are now male dryads in the monster manual. That's not all, though, because I think that one was the big headline that most people caught. But there's also male Medusas, and there's female satyrs, right? And this is all just such complete nonsense, right? It's just so stupid. Because, well, first of all, you know, if this was anything other, like, you notice that these are all from Greek myth. And in Greek myth, they very much had these kind of attributions of certain specific vices or virtues. And they often saw these as part of the masculine or the feminine archetype, right? And so Medusa and dryads are very specific type of feminine archetypes, right? And satyrs are very specifically male. And yet here they're like, no, because, you know, we don't want to, they could be any gender, right? So any one of the 72 genders, right? This is inclusion to the point of stupidity. It's like saying, well, you know, your car tire can be male or female or any of the other 52 genders we've invented, right? It's that same idiocy to suggest that as to suggest that you can have a male or female or intersex satyr, right? That's not how it works. Okay, and they've done similar things with the incubus and succubus, and said basically every monster now can be every gender. You know, so your beholder can be a demi boy, and mind flayers can be neutroids and whatever else, right? Like there's any of the genders that they have invented, they can be them, which is the exact dumbest thing you could possibly do, right? These are not. This is a world of myth, and instead they turn into something so banal and so worldly and so not epic, right? That's the fundamental problem from the gameplay line of things, right? From that perspective, right? There's a whole slew of other problems, but let's look at it as the most real problem that comes to it in the context of D&D being a game. Right? In the game, you want the game to be epic. You want it to be about the battle between good and evil. You want it to be about epic things and epic creatures, and that the creatures are something alien and scary. And instead, if you have, like, you know, beholders in knit sweaters that are waiting to complete their in vitro fertilization to get an adopted baby beholder or something, like, that's just stupid, right? That's just, there's no purpose in that, right? There's no purpose in having in turning everything into this kind of millennial soap opera that only the childless cat ladies J.D. Vance warned us about would have any interest in, and they're still not going to buy it, right? So they are continuing to sabotage D&D at every turn, and partly it's malice, of course it is, of course part of it is malice, but part of it is also the fact that they're too stupid to understand myth, and therefore to understand monsters, okay? So I guess that's everything for today. If you like this video, hit the like button, share it anywhere you can, spread the word, share the video, and check out all my products. If you want real monsters that come out of, you know, for your OSR or D&D type games that come out of myth, you've got Sword and Caravan that's got monsters from all the areas of the Silk Road. Baptism of Fire has your whole collection of monsters of Slavic folktales, which, believe me, Slavic monsters are goddamn weird. I don't know if they're weirder than the Basques, but other than that, they are really weird. and then Lion and Dragon, of course, has the medieval authentic version of the Anglo-Saxon Norman monsters that you are probably most used to, but have mostly, if you've seen them mostly out of like modern day fantasy, they're not going to look the same. They're going to look pretty different and better, in my opinion, in their medieval version. So check out any of those if you want to get something better than the Monster Manual. For God's sakes, do not buy the new Monster Manual, okay? But you don't have to buy my stuff, though. I think you won't be disappointed if you do. But don't give them money for this nonsense, right? Okay, that's everything for today. Don't forget to see us on Sunday night, live. It's the RPG Pundit Encounter, and it's going to be with Sandy Peterson. Do not miss it. It's going to be fantastic. Currently smoking. This is, like I said, I haven't actually lit it yet. This is a Neerup walnut plus Argento roots.